Okay, it has been interrupted in between. Okay, where I'm talking about high diastolic blood pressure is even required in systemic vessels. Why? Because of the severe vascular resistance. Why there is more vascular resistance? Because of the resting vasoconstrictor tone. Sympathetic nerves are always driving your, especially the arterial muscles to constrict. That is very, very, very less in your vasoconstrictor tone. Even with highest sympathetic stimulation also, your pulmonary vessels will not constrict more than 75% of their diameter. With highest sympathetic stimulation also. Sympathetic stimulation obviously causes vasoconstriction in pulmonary vessels also, but it will not be that much as your systemic vessels. And it has very low resting sympathetic tone, vasoconstrictor tone. And if the most of the times, we will discuss in the next slide, the some of the pulmonary capillaries will not be having any blood flow. Okay, so if the mean arterial pressure increases, these capillaries will be recruited, and already present capillaries will be distended. They can distend because of their higher compliance. They can be distended and they can be recruited. This again decreases the overall peripheral pulmonary vascular resistance. So, how pulmonary vascular resistance is affected? Mainly by the lung volumes. This is very easy if you understand. I told you there are two types of vessels, mainly alveolar vessels and extra-alveolar vessels. Alveolar vessels are your arterioles, capillaries and venules. They are mainly under the control of alveolar pressure. So, how do you measure the alveolar vessels? Transmural pressure. Simple. Mean arterial pressure in the alveolar vessels minus outside pressure, that is alveolar pressure. If this pressure increases, what happens? If this pressure increases more than this pressure, the transmural pressures will become negative. Once this transmural pressure across alveolar vessel wall is negative, then what will happen? These alveolar vessels, arterioles, capillaries and venules will collapse. Or else, simply remember like this, under alveoli, these vessels are present. So, if the alveolar pressure is very high, these vessels get compressed. When they get compressed, their diameter reduces, increasing the pulmonary vascular resistance. Right? When the vessels are compressed, the vascular resistance increases. Radius decreases, the resistance increases. So, at higher lung volumes, what happens? At higher lung volumes means more and more air in the alveoli and more intra-alveolar pressure. This, when the alveolar pressure is more than the mean arterial pressure in alveolar vessels, they get compressed, increasing the pulmonary vascular resistance. So this is at higher lung volumes, and there is excess air in the alveoli and compressing this. Mostly we will see this in your upper capillaries, upper part of the capillaries, upper lung capillaries. At lower lung volumes, let's say during forced expirations, what happens to extra-alveolar vessels? What is the transmural pressure in extra-alveolar vessels? That is your pulmonary artery and pulmonary vein. It is mean arterial pressure inside the vessel minus outside pressure. What is outside pressure? It is intrapleural pressure. In all conditions, intrapleural pressure is always negative. Negative of negative will become positive. So, in most of the conditions, the transmural pressure in extra-alveolar vessel is always positive, except during forced expiration, where this is positive, and once this intrapleural pressure is more positive than the mean arterial pressure, the transmural pressures in your extra-alveolar vessels will become negative. Or else simply remember, when the intrathoracic pressure is very high, the extra-alveolar vessels, pulmonary artery and pulmonary veins, then they get compressed. So this happens at lower lung volumes, increasing vascular resistance. So what is important is at both highest lung volumes and lowest lung volumes, the pulmonary vascular resistance increases. At highest lung volumes, it is because of compression of alveolar vessels. At lowest lung volumes, it is because of the collapse of extra alveolar vessels. Simple. If you study in your book also, you will understand this. Again, listen to this in loop, then you will understand easily. Okay, imagine the transmural pressure and the conditions where these pressures will increase. Okay, will increase. Oxygen tension. This is very, very important. You have to remember this forever in your life. The collapse, the constriction of your pulmonary vessels depends on the oxygen tension in the alveoli, not arterial tension of oxygen. Okay, get it? The vessel diameter or constriction of your pulmonary vessels mainly depends on the alveolar partial pressure of oxygen. What happens in systemic circulation? If the partial pressure of oxygen in tissues decreases or else in the blood vessels decreases, that leads to vasodilatation. That leads to vasodilatation. Whereas in alveoli, if the oxygen partial pressure in alveolar air decreases, normally it is 106 millimeters of mercury. I will discuss that again in exchange of gases. Exchange of gases we finished. Again in another video I will discuss exchange of gases after finishing your ventilation perfusion ratios. So then you will understand why there is differences between your inspired air and alveolar air gases partial pressures. Okay. The low alveolar oxygen tension is the potent pulmonary vasoconstrictor. It directly affects the vessel walls. It directly affects the vessel wall. And also there are various hormones which act as constrictors and dilators given in your textbook. So this is very, very important. The alveolar oxygen tension, if it decreases, if the partial pressure of oxygen in alveoli decreases, it directly stimulates the smooth muscles around your pulmonary vessels, constricting them, increasing the vascular resistance, which is exactly opposite in your systemic circulation, where the low tissue or partial pressure of oxygen causes vasodilatation. It mainly depends on the inhibition of the potassium channels in the blood vessels, where potassium channels will be inhibited in the arterial circulation, leading to the that we will see in the other slides. So what is the significance of this low pulmonary vascular resistance? This is very, very important. First of all, it accommodates 5 liters of your cardiac output. Second thing, at the root of pulmonary artery, the velocity of the blood with which the blood is ejected from the right ventricle into the pulmonary aorta is 40 centimeter per second, same as your systemic aorta. With this much speed, if the blood goes into the pulmonary vessels, the transit time, I already told you how much time the blood stays during the entire cardiac cycle. It should stay for 0.75 seconds. Because this, the size of the circulation bed is less, the blood will cross very easily the pulmonary circulation, but that is not happening. What happens is, because of this low resistance, the higher velocity flows are reduced. Okay, because of the low resistance, the moment blood enters with high velocity, the vessels will become relaxed. Because of the high compliance, they will relax. Their diameter increases, reducing the flow rate. Okay, when the radius is increased, mainly increased and accommodating the more and more incoming blood flow, the velocity of the blood will become decreased, increasing the transit time. Transit time is very, very important for the gas exchange. The more the time blood stays in your pulmonary circulation, easy will be your gas exchange. For at least when we are talking about oxygen, carbon dioxide readily diffuses, whatever might be the transit time. But for oxygen, transit time is 0.3 seconds. Oxygen will equalize its partial pressure between alveoli and your pulmonary capillaries, right? For the oxygen gas exchange to occur, and from the alveoli, it has to enter the tissue, it has to go and bind to hemoglobin. At the same time, the dissolved content of the oxygen should increase in the pulmonary capillaries. Then only the partial pressure of oxygen increases. So that's why we say oxygen is flow limited. transit time should be minimum 0.75 seconds. At least for oxygen, it should be 0.3 second, where oxygen will equalize between the alveolar and pulmonary capillaries. What equalizes? According to the diffusion, their tension should equalize. Diffusion occurs till they reach same gas tension, same gas partial pressure. Similarly, this increases the capillary surface area because of the low pulmonary vascular resistance. Easily capillaries will increase in size, increases the surface area, increase in surface area increases the gas exchange, Fick's law again. Okay, it increases the respiratory membrane surface area, and it also reduces the load on right ventricle, which prevents pulmonary edema. How this happens, we will see in the other slides. Okay, mainly it reduces the excess load on right ventricle, especially when right ventricle is pumping 5 liters of blood into the very small organs compared to your entire body. Because of this low pulmonary vascular resistance, the load on the afterload, especially afterload on the right ventricle, decreases. If this load does not decrease and it is as high as systemic circulation, this leads to pulmonary edema. That we'll discuss in later slides. Then coming to gravity, first is vascular resistance that affects your pulmonary circulation, and next factor being gravity. So the mean arterial pressure of your pulmonary circulation at the level of heart is 14 millimeters of mercury, and above the level of heart, not only for this, anywhere in the pulmonary circulation, in your systemic circulation, because of the effect of gravity, as you go 1 centimeter above the heart, especially in your standing posture. Supine posture, there is no effect of gravity. In standing posture, when you go away from the heart towards your head, for every 1 centimeter, there is reduced fall of 0.74 millimeter mean arterial pressure, both for pulmonary and systemic circulation. That's why mean arterial pressure in systemic circulation at your heart is 95 in standing posture, and when you go towards your head, it will become 60 millimeters of mercury at the tip of your scalp. Similarly, when you go away from the heart towards the feet, because of the effect of gravity, the mean arterial pressure increases by 0.74 mm Hg, 0.74 mm Hg. That's why at the feet, in systemic circulation, your blood mean arterial pressure will go up to 180, That is given in your textbook also, diagram in your CVS. In GK Pol it is given. So when we are talking about lungs, see, heart is at somewhere at this region in lung. So the apex of lung is 10 centimeters above heart and base is 5 centimeters below the heart. So at the level of heart, the mean arterial pressure in the pulmonary circulation is 14 mmHg, 14 millimeters of mercury, and as you go away above towards the apex, for every 1 centimeter there is 0.74 mm fall in mean arterial pressure. So the mean arterial pressure at the apex is 6.6, and the mean arterial pressure will increase towards the base, that is 17.7. So from this diagram you can say that the capillaries, arterioles or pulmonary vessels at the apex can easily be compressed, right? Because their mean arterial pressure, the inside pressure is less. If the outside pressure, especially alveolar pressure, is more than this pressure, then they can easily get compressed, which will not happen that easily at the base of the lung. So this is the effect of gravity. So from apex to base, the mean arterial pressure increases. From the apex to base, mean arterial pressure increases. So depending on this circulation, we divide lung into 3 zones: upper zone, middle zone, lower zone, zone 1, zone 2 and zone 3. So in the upper zone, okay, the capillary pressures are equal to the barometric pressures. They are mainly equal to the barometric pressures. So there the alveolar pressure will be greater than or equal to the arterial and capillary pressures, which will be more than the pulmonary venous pressure. Okay, what you are supposed to understand is here, the alveolar pressures can be higher than the capillary pressures, and they are always higher than the pulmonary venous pressure. So pulmonary artery goes forms pulmonary capillary below the alveoli, surrounding the alveoli, becomes pulmonary vein and comes out. Okay. So at the upper zone, alveolar pressure is very high. So capillaries will be collapsed. Blood will not go into this circulation. So they will be under perfused. Perfusion is what? The blood flow, blood supply to a tissue. We call it as perfusion. If alveolar pressure is greater than the capillary and venous pressure, they will be collapsed and alveoli pressure will dominate these pressures, making their transmural pressures negative. They will collapse and there will not be any blood flow. So the upper zone of lung, especially the apex parts of lungs, they are highly ventilated. They are well ventilated, but under perfused, especially blood supply is less. Why this happens? Because of the effect of gravity. The low mean arterial pressures are low at the apex of lungs. Because even the ventilation is good, because they don't receive blood as they are collapsed. What happens? There is no gas exchange. Okay. There is no gas exchange. So this comes under alveolar dead space. This comes under alveolar dead space. But in normal human beings who are physiologically normal, this will not be much. There won't be. It will be hardly less than 1%. It won't be much present in your normal individuals, healthy individuals. But when there is loss of blood, especially hemorrhagic shock, hypovolemic shock, when the blood pressure decreases, already the areas which are having lower mean arterial pressures will increase in number, right? If the overall mean arterial pressure decreases, what happens during shock? So the upper zone area will increase. Upper zone area will increase. So if upper zone area increases, that increases the alveolar dead space, because let's say till here in normal physiological subjects, only till here, because of low mean arterial pressures there is zone 1, but because of the hemorrhagic shock, loss of blood, overall mean arterial pressures decreases. So this zone 1 can increase. Zone 1 can increase till here. So all this part will be of no use. It will go under dead space, alveolar physiological dead space, because of, even though it is ventilated, air is present here, because of the collapsed blood vessels, there is no gas exchange. Then middle zone. Here the arterial pressure is greater than the alveolar pressure, but alveolar pressure is more than the venous pressure. So that means veins are compressed under the influence of alveolar pressure, but capillary pressure is more than the alveolar pressure. So blood flow goes till capillaries. Okay, there may be gas exchange, and here the flow of blood mainly depends on the difference between capillary and alveolar pressures rather than artery and venous difference. This is very, very important. So if this pressure overcomes the alveolar pressure, blood will go into the capillaries, exchange of gas occurs, and slowly the blood falls into the pulmonary veins. Because of the high compliance, they will not be collapsed much. Because of the higher compliance, they will not be collapsed much. Sometimes in between, even the alveolar pressure is more than the venous pressure, in between these veins will relax, catching the blood coming from the pulmonary capillaries. So imagine like it will catch blood like ground which catches waterfall water, right? You see, you saw waterfall, water coming from the upper ground level will fall onto the lower ground level. Similarly, when the capillary pressures overcome the alveolar pressures, this blood coming out of the pulmonary capillaries will fall into the pulmonary vein, just like your waterfall. Because these veins are highly compliant, they will not be completely compressed. In between, they try to relax. Alveolar pressures, if they are more, they will try to compress these veins. So middle zone accounts for around 20% of your lung. It will be till here. Most of the lung will be under your lower zone or zone 3, where arterial and venous pressures are more than the alveolar pressures. So here blood is determined, same like your systemic circulation. How the blood flow is determined in capillaries? It is arterial minus venous pressure difference. If arterial minus venous pressure difference is more blood flows through the capillaries, right? On both ends, the pressure on the artery minus pressure in the vein. If this is more blood flows in between the capillaries. It does not depend on the alveoli. Most of the lung will be under zone 3. So how your pulmonary circulation is regulated? Neural regulation by sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves. They only cause mild vasoconstriction and dilatation. Hormonal control, chemical control. This is most important control. Chemical control, especially low oxygen tension. So alveolar hypoxia, we also call it as hypoxemia. What is hypoxemia? Reduced oxygen partial pressures in alveoli. It is a potent pulmonary vasoconstrictor. This inhibits the potassium channels in the smooth muscle cells of your pulmonary vessels. When the potassium channels are inhibited, there is no potassium leak. So what happens to the inside of the membrane? It will go more towards positivity, right? Resting membrane potential, which is negative. Normally under constant potassium efflux, this is maintained negative. When potassium efflux is stopped, resting membrane potential will go towards positive side. Once it reaches threshold, it will cause opening of the voltage gated calcium channel. Once it reaches threshold, what happens? Depolarization. When depolarization of the vascular smooth muscle occurs, voltage gated calcium channels open, right? Smooth muscle, both sodium channels and calcium channels will open and positive charges will flow inside during depolarization. So because of this calcium influx, there will be smooth muscle contraction. So what are the Starling forces here? You remember Starling forces from your, especially in your renal circulation, right? There at the glomerular Bowman's capsule membrane, filtration membrane, there is net filtration pressure where the fluid from the capillaries will enter the Bowman's capsule. What happens in the pulmonary circulation? In the pulmonary interstitium, which is surrounding the pulmonary capillaries, right? Pulmonary capillaries are surrounded by pulmonary interstitium. So in this interstitium, the hydrostatic pressure is not much because time to time fluid is removed by the lymphatics. Similarly, there are no much protein structures, so we don't consider its oncotic pressure also. So only Starling forces acting in the pulmonary vasculature is its hydrostatic pressure inside the pulmonary vessels and oncotic pressure. The hydrostatic pressure is, you already know, the mean arterial pressure is only 14 mm. So the hydrostatic pressure is very less. It is 10 millimeters of mercury. If you remember systemic circulation, especially glomerular capillaries, the hydrostatic pressure is 50 mm, right? Because of high systemic blood pressure. Whereas the capillary pressure is only 10 millimeters of mercury. But oncotic pressure is same like systemic circulation, same composition of the blood, same blood plasma proteins, sodium chloride levels. So the blood oncotic pressure is 25. So what is the net pressure here? 10 minus 25, that is minus 15. So minus 15 mm is the, sorry. So minus 15 mm Hg, that means there is a net reabsorption pressure. So this is not a filtration pressure, this is reabsorption pressure. So what happens? That means because oncotic pressure is more than the hydrostatic pressure, the fluid from the pulmonary interstitium will enter the pulmonary circulation. What happens at your renal circulation? There is net filtration pressure. Their hydrostatic pressure is more than the oncotic pressure. So water from the capillaries will go into Bowman's capsule. Whereas the same happens in your systemic circulation also. Towards arterial end, the fluid goes from the artery capillary into the tissue space. But whereas in pulmonary circulation, because the hydrostatic pressure inside the capillary is less and oncotic pressure is more, when oncotic pressure is more, inside the capillary itself, this oncotic pressure will attract more and more water molecules. So there is net minus 15 mm inward pressure into the pulmonary capillaries. So from where the fluid enters from the interstitium into the capillaries. At the same time, fluid from the alveoli time to time will be cleared into the interstitium and from interstitium into the pulmonary blood vessels. Why? Because the Starling forces in the pulmonary vasculature favors reabsorption. And here one more important pressure is there, the surface tension. But what is with surface tension? Surface tension pulls the pulmonary interstitium, right? Surface tension in the alveoli will try to always collapse the alveoli. Because of surfactant, this will be reduced, right? Surface tension accounts for most of the compliance. It opposes your lung compliance. So surface tension pulls the interstitium. What happens then? The increase in pulmonary interstitial space occurs. When the space increases at constant temperature, the volume of pulmonary interstitium increases. What happens to the pressure? Boyle's law. Pressure decreases. So the interstitial hydrostatic pressure decreases. When the interstitial hydrostatic pressure decreases, it favors filtration into the interstitium, right? When outside hydrostatic pressure decreases than the inside what? Inside your pulmonary capillaries, fluid from pulmonary capillaries tries to enter the interstitium. But this surface tension is always opposed by the alveolar pressure. Alveolar pressure is positive pressure. This will try to compress the interstitium. So try to imagine this thing. Surface tension of alveoli try to pull the interstitium. Alveolar pressure try to push the interstitium. But if surface tension is more than the alveolar pressure, it overcomes the alveolar pressure. What happens? The surface tension try to pull the pulmonary interstitium, increasing the space, leading to filtration pressure, increase in filtration from the pulmonary capillaries into the interstitium. But under normal conditions, because of the net reabsorption pressure of Starling forces and surfactant, which reduces the surface tension, these forces will be balanced and only small amount of fluid will be filtered into the pulmonary interstitium. From the time to time, it is cleared by your lymphatics. Same happens in your systemic circulation, where towards arterial end there is filtration and towards venous end of capillaries there is reabsorption. Some amount, 2% of the fluid will not be filtered, which will be rejoined into the circulation by your lymphatics. So how to measure the pulmonary pressures? By using percutaneous catheters. Directly you insert catheter into the pulmonary artery and you can measure the pressure. How to measure the pressures of pulmonary veins and left atrium? We insert a special catheter known as Swan-Ganz catheter. Okay, Swan-Ganz catheter. Percutaneously you can directly insert it into the pulmonary artery, or else you can insert the catheter via central line, that is your jugular veins. In jugular veins, if you insert the catheter, it will go into your superior vena cava, and from superior vena cava it enters the right atrium, from right atrium, right ventricle into the pulmonary artery. Like that also you can insert the catheters. From the pulmonary artery, this Swan-Ganz catheter will go up till the last achievable capillaries. So at the end of this catheter, it will measure a pressure known as capillary wedge pressure. Okay, the tip of this Swan-Ganz catheter will directly measure the capillary wedge pressure. That is the last capillary pressure which is present before the pulmonary veins. So the capillary wedge pressure indirectly reflects your pulmonary venous and left atrial pressure. Just you are supposed to know this. Left atrial pressure is 8 millimeters of mercury and pulmonary venous pressure is 8 millimeters of mercury. In right ventricle, during systole, the pressure is 25 millimeters of mercury. The blood pressure in pulmonary arterial setup, the circulation is 25 by 9. Okay, 25 by 9. Mean arterial pressure being 15 mm. These things you should just remember. The velocity of blood flow at the root of pulmonary artery is 40 centimeter per second, same as your systemic circulation. So, what is this pulmonary edema? Simple. Accumulation of fluid in your pulmonary interstitial tissue is pulmonary edema. How it occurs? Remember, when left ventricle fails, okay, left ventricle fails, it is not pumping the blood. There is stasis of blood in the left ventricle. Similarly, when the left ventricle blood is not going outside via systemic aorta, there is stasis of blood in the left atrium. Yes, right? Left ventricle is not working properly, or else there is aortic stenosis. Aorta opening is stenosed, reduced. Then also there is increased in left ventricular pressure, leading to blood stasis in the left ventricle. When blood is stopped in the left ventricle, it also stops in the left atrium. So in aortic stenosis, left ventricular failure, mitral stenosis, that means the mitral valve is stenosed. Stenosis is reduction in the diameter. Then blood pools in the left atrium. In all these three conditions, because of blood pooling, there will be increase in the pressures retrogradely in the pulmonary veins, right? See, what is the flow diagram? Pulmonary artery, pulmonary capillaries, pulmonary veins, left atrium, through the mitral valve it goes into left ventricle, and via aortic valve it goes into systemic aorta. If there is any blockage, aortic stenosis, left ventricular failure, mitral stenosis, in all these three conditions, this blood flow is stopped. Blood pools in the circulation retrogradely, increasing the pressures, right? Especially pulmonary blood pressures will be increased in the pulmonary veins, subsequently pulmonary capillaries, subsequently in the pulmonary atrium. So in these conditions, what happens? The pulmonary venous pressure first increases, leading to decrease in pulmonary capillary blood flow. Because pressure increases, capillary blood flow also decreases. Similarly, capillary hydrostatic pressure increases. When capillary hydrostatic pressure increases, normally capillary hydrostatic pressure is 10 mm, and because of oncotic pressure 25 mm, there is net reabsorption. But when this hydrostatic pressure increases, hydrostatic pressure always favors filtration, right? Oncotic pressure opposes filtration, hydrostatic pressure favors filtration. What happens when hydrostatic pressure increases? Fluid from the pulmonary capillaries will enter the pulmonary interstitium. Filtration occurs into the interstitium. When fluid accumulates in the interstitium, the pulmonary interstitium will increase in size, leading to pulmonary edema. So what are the major causes for pulmonary edema? Is left ventricular failure, mitral stenosis, aortic stenosis. This is one cause. I already told you, when there is increased surface tension, normally we have surfactant, so nothing will happen. But in infants, surface tension is, especially premature infants, they will have infant respiratory distress. Especially in adults, when surfactant synthesis decreases, we will have acute respiratory distress syndrome. Also there is adult respiratory distress syndrome. In these conditions, when the surfactant synthesis decreases, what happens to the surface tension? Surface tension increases. When surface tension increases, surface tension try to collapse the alveoli. Alveoli try to compress. When alveoli try to compress, they try to collapse, they pulls the pulmonary interstitium. When they increases the pulmonary interstitial space, volume of the pulmonary interstitium increases, boils law, the pressure drops. Which pressure drops in the pulmonary interstitium? The hydrostatic pressure decreases. When the hydrostatic pressure decreases, the Starling forces, if you remember, when the hydrostatic pressure of pulmonary interstitium decreases, there will be filtration of fluid from pulmonary vessels into the pulmonary interstitium. So this is like a negative pressure in the pulmonary interstitium, which sucks the fluid from pulmonary vessels, which increases the filtration into interstitium, leading to pulmonary edema. So there are two important causes. One is reduced surfactant, increased surface tension, pulling the interstitium, reducing the interstitial hydrostatic pressure. Whether interstitial hydrostatic pressure decreases or capillary hydrostatic pressure increases. This favors filtration from the pulmonary capillaries into the pulmonary interstitium. Once the fluid accumulates in the pulmonary interstitium, that means what is interstitium? The space between your pulmonary vessels and your alveolar membrane, the pulmonary interstitium. This is the place where mainly the collagen, elastin fibers, all these are present. So when this space, lung parenchyma, especially lung parenchyma, when this space increases because of the accumulation of fluid, this leads to pulmonary edema. Similarly, in systemic circulation, into tissue space, when fluid increases, either by reduction in the tissue hydrostatic pressure or else increase in the mainly capillary hydrostatic pressure. In systemic circulation, it is mainly because of the reduced oncotic pressure in your capillaries, right? Why edema occurs in your systemic circulation? It is because of the reduced oncotic pressure. Here, mainly because of the reduced interstitial pressure or else increased capillary hydrostatic pressure. Even during reduced oncotic pressure in pulmonary circulation, there will be pulmonary edema. That means in hypoproteinemia, anemia, these conditions also, because of the reduced oncotic pressure, the net reabsorption pressure decreases, leading to filtration from the pulmonary vessels. So what are the three reasons? Increased surface tension, hypoproteinemia, or else reduced oncotic pressure, and most importantly stasis of blood, either by aortic stenosis, left ventricular failure, mitral stenosis, which increases the pulmonary venous pressure, thereby reducing the capillary flow, increasing hydrostatic pressure, causing filtration into the interstitium. So whatever might be the pathology, the interstitial fluid increases, leading to pulmonary edema. What is the importance of this pulmonary edema? Okay, decrease in oncotic pressure and increased capillary permeability also. If the pulmonary capillary permeability increases, like in oxidative damage occurs in your free radicals. Like there are very free radicals which you will study in aging and antioxidants. Free radicals, especially reactive oxygen species, nascent oxygen, all these things, OH plus, O2 minus, okay, these are the reactive oxygen species normally produced in your cell metabolism, but time to time they are removed by your peroxisomes. Okay, if you remember, they are removed by your peroxisomes, but in sometimes this oxidative agents, okay, super oxide free radicals, we call them as free radicals, when they increase, they cause the damage to the capillary, in inflammation, in neurogenic shock, when the pulmonary capillary permeability also increases, filtration of fluid occurs from the capillaries into the interstitium, causing pulmonary edema. Most importantly, stasis of blood in left ventricular failure, aortic stenosis, mitral stenosis, increased surface tension due to reduced surfactant, decreased oncotic pressure, increased capillary permeability, there will be pulmonary edema. What happens when the pulmonary edema occurs? Especially the interstitium increase in the size of interstitium leads to increase in the thickness of respiratory membrane. Again, if you remember Fick's law, rate of diffusion is inversely proportional to the thickness. In edema, thickness increases, so the rate of gas exchange decreases. When the gas exchange decreases, oxygen levels in your blood decreases, leading to hypoxia. Carbon dioxide levels in your blood increases, mainly hypercapnia. And also this pulmonary edema compresses the small airways, which increases the airway resistance. Main cause is increase in the surface tension. So surface tension increases, lung compliance is decreased. This is very, very important. Because of the increase in surface tension, the lung compliance decreases. When both increase in surface tension and lung compliance is reduced, what happens to work of breathing? Increases. Similarly, when the airways are obstructed, airway resistance increases. Then what happens to work of breathing? Increases. So because of the reduced compliance and increased airway resistance, work of breathing increases severely during your pulmonary edema. With only at least reduced lung compliance, work of breathing increases. Increased airway resistance also, work of breathing increases. We already discussed this about work of breathing. Okay, it is inversely proportional to your compliance and it is directly proportional to your airway resistance. If compliance reduces, work of breathing increases. That means effort to increase the respiration. Work of breathing is nothing but effort to increase the respiration, especially the muscular effort, will increase. Pulmonary edema. Just go through this slide for few seconds. Impaired gas exchange, obstruction of smaller airways because of the interstitial edema. This increase in interstitial pressure compresses the smaller airways. This increases the airway resistance. Increase in airway resistance increases work of breathing. And there is increase in surface tension in pulmonary edema, reduces the lung compliance. This also indirectly increases the work of breathing. So these two things will increase the work of breathing very vigorously. So simple treatment for this pulmonary edema is give diuretics. Okay, it reduces the overall body fluid volume, reducing the interstitial hydrostatic pressure. If the cause is mainly left ventricular failure, we will give digitalis, digoxin. What is the effect of this drug? It blocks the sodium potassium ATPase pump, right? Digitalis, digoxin will go to and bind the Obein site of the sodium potassium pump. When sodium potassium pump is blocked, what happens? Sodium is not pumped outside. Sodium stays inside. When sodium is inside, what happens at the sodium calcium exchanger? There is no calcium exchange. At the same time, calcium level also increases inside, right? You remember that initial classes where I discussed about sodium potassium pump. When sodium is more inside, calcium also will be more inside in your cardiac muscle cells. When the sodium potassium pump is blocked, you have to go there. Okay, at the sodium potassium pump, you can refer your general physiology, GK Paul. There at the sodium potassium pump, this action of digitalis has been explained. It can be your question. So digitalis improves the cardiac contraction by retaining calcium inside the cardiac muscle cells. Also give vasodilators. Mainly vasodilators dilate systemic circulation. So the fluid from pulmonary circulation will shift to the systemic circulation. And also there are two things: drowning. Okay, when person immerses in water, when person falls into water, what happens during drowning? Especially there are two types of drowning: seawater drowning and freshwater drowning. In seawater drowning, person mainly he will hold his breath for some time. After that he will inhale, but because water is present around his body, water will be entering your lungs. So here what happens? That saline water, sea water is a hypertonic solution. So what happens? Into this hypertonic solution, the osmosis occurs from your pulmonary circulation. Osmosis occurs from your pulmonary circulation into the edema. There will be development of pulmonary edema and exchange of gases will be impaired and the subject will die in seawater. Seawater because the subject inhales mainly the hypertonic saline solution, which causes osmosis from the pulmonary capillaries into the interstitium, thereby interstitium into the alveoli. At the same time, because of the increase in pulmonary membrane thickness, there will be pulmonary edema and death of the subject. What happens in freshwater drowning? Freshwater is hypotonic. Okay, when the person inhales, okay, when fresh water enters his lungs, fluid from the fresh water will enter the pulmonary vessels because of the oncotic pressure inside the pulmonary vessels. Osmosis occurs from fresh water into the pulmonary circulation. Slowly the pulmonary circulation will be diluted. When this dilution occurs, especially RBC are surrounded by your hypotonic solution, hypotonic plasma. Then RBC will imbibe water till they break. Once RBC break, they release immense amount of potassium, which will cause hyperkalemia, induced ventricular fibrillation. So the cause of death in freshwater drowning is ventricular fibrillation, whereas cause of death in seawater drowning is pulmonary edema. This finishes our pulmonary circulation. Next class we will discuss mainly about your ventilation perfusion ratios. Go through the textbook, okay, and wait for the next class.